Right now, the New York Rangers are in a very tight race for one of the last remaining wildcard spots in the Eastern Conference. The top wildcard spot, which is being held by the Ottawa Senators right now, is more than likely going to stay with them as they have kind of started to separate themselves from the rest of the teams competing for the wildcard spot. So it pretty much right now is the Rangers and about four other teams kind of competing for just that second wildcard spot, the last remaining playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at, I would say, the biggest key to success and the biggest key to the Rangers getting into the playoffs, which is Igor Shesterkin. This is a guy who needs to step up big time down the stretch here, as there are only 13 games remaining in the schedule after that game last night against the Calgary Flames. So there's not a ton of games left here in this season. It's coming down to the wire, and this is a very tight race. There's a lot of teams competing for that last wild card spot. So the Rangers really need their what's going to be the second highest paid player in Igor Shesterkin, obviously next season. He needs to step up big time for this team. He got that major extension. He got that historic deal that he wanted to get that he thought would end up kind of resetting the kind of goalie market. It did not happen. A lot of other guys are getting these extensions, which are a lot cheaper. And, we can talk about that for a second here. I know a lot of Rangers fans have definitely been quite critical of that. And I understand that. I mean, Igor's making almost like double what a lot of these kind of really solid, really good, well above average goalies are kind of making around the NHL right now. You see what Logan Thompson got, Charlie Lindgren, Aiden Hill. I mean, there are a bunch of goalies that have gotten these new extensions this season that have just been literally about like half almost of what Igor Shesterkin's making. A lot of these guys are getting this kind of, 6 to kind of $5 million range worth for these, above average starting caliber goalies. And obviously, Igor is making a lot of money there. He's by far kind of the highest paid goalie compared to the guys who have signed, contract extensions fairly recently. Obviously, Bob is right there at 10 mil, so he's not too far off of what Igor is going to be making. But you take a look at those deals that have kind of been signed recently. I know it is about half, and I understand that it doesn't look great. And I am not saying that this Igor Shesterkin contract is phenomenal. Even when this deal was going to be made, and I kind of figured it was going to be around this kind of range here, above 11 mil, I kind of figured it would be with the way everything was going and the way the Rangers didn't really have a ton of leverage. So I understood, obviously, that it was not going to be a great, maybe ideally kind of team-friendly deal, but you have to understand that come playoff time, we know who the most valuable player has been for this Rangers team come playoff time. You take a look at the last three kind of playoff appearances for this Rangers team. The only reason why this team was able to make it to two different conference finals appearances against Tampa and against Florida there was because of Igor Shesterkin. If we're being honest, that's kind of the main reason why. Sure, some other players play great at moments as well. Obviously, this team still score goals to get the job done there, and they still have to play at least a bit of defense. But if we're being honest, Igor Shesterkin really kind of carried this team along to two Eastern Conference Finals appearances. And even that first round exit against the Devils there, Igor didn't have, all 7 games. They weren't phenomenal, but for the most part there, he was still a quite phenomenal goaltender, really showed, what he does in the playoffs there, being a consistent playoff performer. So that is the one thing that I think we know we're getting out of Igor is a very good playoff performer. And if he showed up in the playoffs this year, let's say, and the Rangers make it, and he ended up flopping big time, then maybe you can start to get a little worried about this contract. But for now, I don't hate the deal. I don't love it, and I don't think it's the greatest value. But when you do consider how valuable this player was to the Rangers over the last kind of 3 playoff runs there, and you really take a look at kind of where the Rangers had no leverage at all at this point, if we're being honest here, if you let this guy walk, this team could be in a really bad spot. And I understand, in the regular season, he has not shown up. I mean, let's be honest here, he has not performed anywhere near what he should be doing for how much he's getting paid now, or at least he's going to be getting paid with that new extension. So I understand that. I don't love this deal. I mean, it may never be the greatest deal in the world, that's for sure, but I just think you have to kind of understand where the Rangers didn't have a lot of leverage. It's not an ideal spot to be in, and the Rangers did kind of put themselves here, but I just think with how important he's been to this team, it made sense why he obviously wanted to make so much money. It is a little unfortunate here that so many other teams are getting these kind of seemingly great value deals, but you also have to consider that Igor Shesterkin has truly been the by far best goalie throughout the last 3 playoff runs. And if you don't believe me, let's take a look at the stats here, because he has proven to be the top goalie playoff performer, the top playoff performer, you could almost say, in the entire NHL over the last 3 playoff runs. Obviously, like McDavid and there's a lot of other guys do some great stuff, but especially among goalies, he has been the clear best goalie in the last 3 playoff runs combined. So let's take a look at the stats here that really back up my point. And there's not necessarily a perfect stat for really any position, but I would say the best stat to judge goaltenders is goals saved above expected. And back in the 2021-2022 playoffs, after Igor Shesterkin was coming off that Vezina winning regular season there, he goes into the playoffs and the Rangers end up making it all the way to the conference finals, where they end up losing in Game 6 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Igor Shesterkin ended up finishing first in goals saved above expected throughout that entire playoff run there, having 20 games played and an 18.6 goals saved above expected. The guy in second place there was Andrei Vasilevskiy with 23 games played, obviously as he made it to the cup final there, and he ended up having 15.5. So 3.1 more goals saved above expected is quite a bit there, especially with Andre having 3 more games played. You've got in third place there, Jake Ottinger, 7 games played, 10.1. He did quite phenomenal as well. But you just take a look at that there. 20 games played, 18.6 goals saved above expected is very, very good. He led the entire league that playoff run. So there, he was arguably the best goaltender in that playoff run. Now you take a look at the next season there in 2022-2023, where Igor Shesterkin only had 7 games played as the Rangers faced an early exit in the first round there against the New Jersey Devils in Game 7, where he ended up having 7 games played and an 8.8 goals saved above expected. So over 1 per game is not bad at all. It's actually quite good. He obviously ended up being in second place there. The top spot was Bobrovsky, who had 19 games played, so almost 3 times the amount of games that Igor had to play, and he had 16.3. So Igor didn't do too bad there at all. Obviously only having 7 games played. Being in second place is quite good. When you take a look at the next guy in third place with 16 games there, being Aiden Hill in third place with a 7.7. So Igor there among goaltenders who, let's be honest, if you take a look at the kind of total goals saved above expected, there weren't a ton of goalies that did phenomenal, but Igor was still in second place there in the entire NHL after being a first-round exit, which is not bad at all. And now for last season's playoffs, where the New York Rangers ended up losing in Game 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Florida Panthers, but Igor Shesterkin ended up finishing second for goals saved above expected with 13.1 and having 16 games played. The top goalie was Jeremy Swayman with 13.3, so just 0.2 more. He did have 4 less games played there, so you could definitely say Jeremy Swayman maybe outperformed him, but you really take a look at that playoff run, Igor Shesterkin carried this team along. And you take a look at the third place guy there, it's Jake Ottinger with 7.3 and having 19 games played. So there's a pretty major dip after that kind of, second to third spot there, with Jeremy Swayman and Igor being by far the 2 best goalies. And we all know Igor definitely carried the Rangers. Swayman carried the Bruins as well, you could say, but we all know what happened with the Rangers there and why they got so far in the playoffs, and that was mainly because of what Igor Shesterkin was able to do. And I don't say this to fully justify why Igor Shesterkin got this contract, because I do think the Rangers kind of put themselves in a bad spot. You kind of take a look at how Chris Drury has built this team. It hasn't been great, and you take a look at how good and important Igor Shesterkin has been. It doesn't really put yourself in a good leverage spot come negotiation time when you have a guy who has carried this team to 2 of the last Eastern Conference Finals. He's won a Vezina, and yeah, he hasn't been great consistently in the regular season, but he's still been absolutely elite come playoff time, and he does have that 1 Vezina, so there were going to be teams that would have been willing to pay him quite a bit of money come free agency. So I think Chris Drury kind of backed himself into the corner there and allowed Igor to just kind of have to carry this team along there. And then obviously Igor was going to say, well, hey, I've been the most valuable guy on this team by far. I'm the best goalie come playoff time in the NHL. Pay me what I want, or, I might end up walking. And obviously, I don't know exactly what was said in negotiations and all that kind of stuff there, but Igor had all the leverage in the world. Whether we like to say that or not, he did. He had all the leverage there. The Rangers did not have a lot there with him being a pending UFA. So I would definitely say it is unfortunate the Rangers had to pay him as much as he got, but it is really the fault of Chris Drury not being able to build a good enough team around Igor to actually kind of justify, not having to pay him that much. But getting back to the regular season talk here, I do think Igor needs to step up his game big time. He has not played good enough in the regular season, especially after signing a historic contract like he's obviously got. So I am hopeful that he'll really step up here over the last kind of, dozen games or so now. Rangers have 13 games left to play, and Arthur Staple did predict, before this Calgary Flames game that he kind of believes Igor Shesterkin will start 12 of the last 14 games. So obviously he got that start against the Flames last night. So that's obviously 13 games left now remaining. So we could end up seeing him potentially be in 11 of the last 13 games, maybe according to Arthur Staple, which honestly kind of makes sense. You paid him that much money. He's got to step up big time, and he can't just be a playoff performer. Obviously, you want your guys to perform in the playoffs. That's kind of what matters most, but you still have to be able to get there at moments, and you can go on a good run even as like an 8 seed or a 7 seed, in a conference, right? It's still possible to go on a run as a wild card team. So I'm hopeful this team will make it, and if they can make it, you never know what can happen. But Igor Shesterkin needs to be the big factor, the X factor for this team for the last kind of dozen or so games here for this Rangers team. He needs to step up big time for this squad. He's making a lot of money. He's going to be the second highest paid player on the New York Rangers. He signed a historic goalie contract, the biggest goalie contract in NHL history. A lot of guys around the league are signing for almost half of what he's making per season, so he's got to show up big time. I think he is a better player performer for sure than those guys, and obviously he has that Vezina trophy under his belt, but in the regular season he has not quite shown that since that Vezina, so hopefully he can have a major kind of great kind of run here throughout the rest of this season here and carry this team into the playoffs, which I am very hopeful he can do. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post every single day. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on Igor Shesterkin, his new contract, and also kind of what are your thoughts? Do you want to see Igor play like a bunch of games down the stretch, like the next kind of 11 of 13 here? What do you want to see him do? Do you think he can kind of step up big time and kind of carry this team along into the playoffs? Let me know your thoughts on the Rangers. I'll catch you next one.